So this comes from Muthu, and he has a few questions, so I'll try to streamline it as much as I can. So he's asking, how did you develop interest in this particular subject? And also why Hindus are not able to defend themselves, which I think is in the context of, the narratives that are being built, especially with, all these platforms against them. Why are they not able to defend themselves effectively?
We'll give very short answers. I know we're running out of time over here. So the first thing is, my interest was, my interest in the subject was my inward journey following the, when I came to this country, it was 1990. So what's the word? I'm not getting the correct word for it. So when I looked at the differences in the civilizations, India, from the India of 90s to here, today's kids who come have got absolutely no question of differences between the Indic life and here, no confusion, no difference. But I saw enormous differences. And my effort to understand that led to my identity discovery. I must have read every book on India in Oregon State University, where I was doing my PhD at that time. And that time was not so discriminating in the kind of books I read. So I read a whole host of different books, Marxist writers, colonial writers, and other things. Plus, I'm a product of an India where there was no television. That was a time when we grew up reading books, and books was our relief. So we read books, we read Amar Chatra Katha, we read Baban's journal, which was subscribed in our house. So we had a strong connection with our identity based on that. That's the reason why my interest in this subject. Second, the question was, why can't we do much about this? I put 4 forces at work today. The colonial, the liberal academic bias, the media which is sold out to special interests, and finally the Marxists. There are 4 forces the Indic person must do. The Hindu, we know, is completely a disorganized unity. I'm not saying in the negative connotation of the word. We are on an individual journey, each of us, and that's the reason, because we don't come together for a cause, because such a thinking is not, I'm not saying it negatively. I'm saying that each of us are on an individual journey, and that's how our forefathers saw our lives playing out as a consequence of karma that we have, and so on. So we have not been as good as the Abrahamic people in mobilizing people into a church, in mobilizing people into a mosque, and trying to work towards a collective identity, enforcement of the commandments, thou shalt obey a divine dictated law. That has never been an enforcement issue for us, because we didn't have divine dictated laws. We were left to understand and interpret karma according to the existing Dharma Shastras and do the best that we could do. So that's the reason why the battle is very difficult.
You seem to be quite popular, Dr. Vedam, so just stick around for a little bit. We do have 10 minutes for question and answer, so it's all right. This question comes from Vivek Sharma, who's asking, why were Egyptian Sumerian archaeological evidences dated to before 3000 BC, which is before Noah's flood, while Indian historical evidences were only subjected to this bias? Does this not violate the biblical narrative?
So we got to divide it between the early historians who came, the 1700s, the 1800s, the people who were doing the research. Yes, they all came under the thinking of Anglican Church and so on. The books they wrote also assigned dates of 2000 BC, 2700 BC to Sumeria and other such places. If you were to look at the early books, you'll find all of these things. Then the Rosetta Stone was found. Rosetta Stone was found, and they were able to figure out what the language is talking about and so on. And deeper research has gone. And now they divide Egypt into Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, Later Kingdom, and these kinds of things. Now there's a better understanding of history in that context. So if you ask why they accept that and not this, on the ground, archaeologically, we have carbon dating. Carbon dating was not 1700s or 1800s or 1900s. It's a 20th century invention, carbon dating, because it's based on radioactive ideas. How much of C14 is present in carbon material. That was not there. But today with carbon-14, you can come and say, yeah, this pharaoh stone, this wooden piece that you got is actually this old. You can come and say that. With plus and minus some error, obviously. You can say something like that. So there is hard evidence from sciences that talk about antiquity. Plus, you have the Sphinx, you got the Great Pyramids of Giza, you got a whole lot of other things present. So there's evidence present over there. However, in the context of India, the earliest writing they found were Ashokan pillars, Ashokan writing. They didn't find anything prior to that. Indus Valley was only discovered in 1910s or so, Cunningham and others. It was not found earlier than that. So the early historians like William Jones and others, they took their inspiration from Puranas to write Indian history. And that was their problem. The Puranas, unfortunately, are now going before the Bible period. So we need to do something about that. So they started to write everything with later and later. But now we have an opportunity to come and overturn these things. But unfortunately, our Marxist ideologues and strongholds and holdouts will not allow any Indic content to come into studies because they'll say it is not secular, whatever that word means. It's secular. So that even the history of the country we can't study, even the history of our literature we cannot study because we are now exposing children and others to so-called non-secular ideas. One of the worst perversions is being played out in India on our own identity, if you ask me. So it's completely bogus. I will talk in depth tomorrow where I'll again present similar ideas. So I understand the frustrations you have when you ask a question, but this is the unfortunate consequence. We need to challenge, you and I and everybody, scholars need to challenge this, push back on this and make it change. That's the only way to make it happen.
So another quick question is, there's no name here. Mohan, this comes from Mohanji, and he's asking, so Srikant Talageri's work, which shows, the east to west movement rather than the west to east movement in chronology, is there any material that is available to read about it?
Yes, Srikant Talageri has written a lot of books, so the names of the books don't come immediately. You Google for his books, he's written books on these things, so please purchase those books and read it. He's also written a lot of popular articles. If you search in Google, you'll also find his PowerPoint slides. So you can download those things. He's got actual references, which Mandela, which are the verses that he's claiming are responsible for his saying that he's mentioning these rivers over here. Now he's come here, now he's mentioning these rivers. He's talking about the language, archaic words in Sanskrit. So old words in Sanskrit that were common with Hittites and with Mitannis. No longer used in Paninian grammar, Sanskrit and later. So by using evidences of that nature, he's able to come and claim that there was a east to west migration. It's a beautiful analysis. So I don't remember the name of his book, but it's got Rigveda in the title. So please read it.
Okay, this is from Medha Joshi, and she's asking, what are your thoughts on the Vishnu Puran avatars and human evolution?
I don't have an opinion. So it's a tough one. So our Puranas talk a lot, and it's my firm belief that because of the terseness with which Sanskrit works were written, remember they probably were composed at a time when writing was not yet there. Again, I'm making a leap of faith when I say that. But there was a terseness in oral records that required communicating complex ideas in prosody form so that it lasts through centuries without distortion. Which means, unfortunately, you must have the key. If you don't have the key, you can't understand what these texts mean. You can't understand what the text means. That's why the Upanishads came, the Brahmanas, so many literary works, the Gurus interpret all of these things. And today's contemporary scholars do this work for us, trying to understand these things. The Puranas also might have talked some things with their understanding of science encoded into stories. In fact, I have a TED talk on this. If you go and look for a TED talk with my name on it, you'll find that I have talked about some of the Greek stories and Indic stories. I talked about the story of why Chandra loved Rohini more than his other wives. So it's a cute story from our Puranas, and most people say, this is a fairy tale. Come on, Chandra, you can't make him into a human being and love and all these things. But I showed that there is intrinsic, intricate astronomical wisdom encoded in those ideas. The idea is one of occultation. Occultation is when the moon goes over a principal nakshatra or a star. It turns out, depending on the ecliptic, where different stars are positioned, Chandra has got a propensity to cover Rohini more than Kritika or any other nakshatra. These last 4 years, up to 2018, Chandra occulted Rohini's Aldebaran by about maybe 52 times. I got the correct figure in my Facebook post, 52 times. Whereas the next nearest in the previous 4-year cycle was Kritika at 24 times. So what it tells you is that ancients over 19-year periods you can observe, every 19 years you can observe the Metonic, so-called Metonic cycle. Our ancients continuously observed the skies, they were able to encode certain things and to communicate that wisdom they wove it into story and put it somewhere over there. So when you ask about Dashavataram, you need the key. Maybe there is wisdom in it. I'm not qualified to say anything more than that.
All right, we have two more questions, so let's try and keep the answers brief if it's possible. This question comes from Ranjay Singh. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Are Hindus native to their land? Are you negating the science of Homo sapien from Africa? I think you did sort of answer this question.
So you need to deconstruct a lot of things. You impose an identity called Hindus. Are they endemic to the land or African? So you need to deconstruct that. What do you mean by Hindu? So it's an identity, was it acquired suddenly somewhere, someplace, and so on? It's a difficult question to answer. So when you map certain constructs emotionally into an argument, which if you deconstruct word by word, you can show the uselessness of that argument, then many of these questions fall apart. These questions are not relevant. So science today is telling, genetics at least, the model Homo sapien came about 80,000 years ago, I'm talking about India, came about 80,000 years ago into the Indian subcontinent, Mount Toba, all those things are there. But the question is, were there humans living in India prior to that? Tomorrow's talk, I will show you artifacts of Athiram Pattam. Athiram Pattam is in Tamil Nadu. I'll show you from 1 million years ago, there are artifacts. And what are these artifacts? These are the Homo erectus. Homo erectus is a name given in science which can, again, questionably, you can deconstruct these things. When somebody says Homo sapien, Homo erectus, where is the distinction? Is the specialization so sharp that you say that, yep, this is Homo erectus, this is this one? I'm not debunking the whole science of paleontology. They got some very good reasons why they say that. There is somebody who was walking erect or like this, what the size of the thigh bone, what weight could it have carried. There are some very good reasons why they're doing these things. But in the Narmada man, they found a cranial capacity of 1,400 cubic centimeters. Whereas the Homo erectus in Southeast Asia and China, the average is 1,000 cubic centimeters. Narmada man is around 300,000 years old. Homo sapien or Homo erectus? Is the specialization so sharp? We don't know. The best answer is we don't know. So let us not take positions based upon emotional labels and identities like Africa, India, Homo erectus, Homo sapien, Hindu, non-Hindu. I think these questions can be deconstructed and they become meaningless in a sense.
Okay, this comes from Shiraj, says, Dr. Vedam, thank you for a very well researched and well thought through presentation. Question is, how do we take this information and educate the casual observer? And what should the assembled audience do? What can they do to spread this information better?
Yeah. Difficult question, because I have a day job that doesn't involve any of these things. I have a day job as an engineer, and I don't have the time to write my books, unfortunately, or articles as I would love to do it. This is my passion. I do it out of passion. So I'm waiting for the day when I can say, yes, the golden chains are cut, I can do this, but that may not happen. So what can the audience do? The audience you can follow other researchers like me. There are others, Dr. Sundar and Dr. Sanjay Kumar and several other researchers. Follow their works, follow and propagate to your WhatsApp groups, other things. Say, here's an interesting counterpoint to the identity questions that we have been grappling with. If you find a disconnect between what media is telling you and what you have experienced, internalized, and know of your Indic identity, if you see the disconnect, then you know there's a problem. Then you should take it as a mission for yourself to go and spread this knowledge somewhere else. Not just this, everything else. Wherever you find this kind of research works, go ahead and do it. For my part, I hope that I'll write some books on this eventually.
We just have one last question that comes from Ram. It says, what evidence do we have about the antiquity of our civilization?
Evidence, yes, tomorrow's talk, Ram. Tomorrow, please come to Chinmaya Mission. I will present evidence from archaeology, I'll present evidence from astronomy, and I will present knowledge transfers. When you study the history of sciences, math, philosophy, language, and everything else, you got to see the origin of the ideas. How did one culture get an idea? How did it go from one culture to the next culture, and so on? So in much of the work that I have at least seen, I don't claim to be an expert in any of these things, I found some curious juxtaposition of lines meeting at India. India is a source where knowledge came. This is contrary to every Eurocentric narrative you might have read, that Indians got all their knowledge from Babylon or from Greeks, Romans, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of counter-evidence in the history of math, for example, astronomy, for example, that does that. So I will present some evidence, hard evidence from astronomy tomorrow. Archaeology in the country has come up to at least 9,000 years ago in Vedam, but in other parts of the country also we have got equally old archaeology. Paleontology has matured to a fairly high level too. So present different evidence. Again, the deconstruction is important. You use the word civilization. What is civilization? The Greeks thought anybody who doesn't know Sanskrit is uncivilized. So what is civilization? So again, the question comes, if a group of people have come together for a common purpose, or perhaps living together, or perhaps doing something simple, question comes, can we assign the word civilization? I'm not an academic. Academics will have some beautiful answers there. To me, when I go to southern India and see some Stone Age, again, Stone Age is a moniker. It's something that must be inverted quotes. Have erected a dolmen of all the structures you find in Karnataka, in Kerala, and Tamil Nadu, ancient ones. Why would they do that? One man can't lift a huge boulder and put it over there. It requires the cooperation of hundreds of people coming together and making that. Is that civilization? People coming together for a common purpose, for something they believe is bigger than them. So, the word civilization is questionable, and so we can show evidence for Indic works, let me put it that way, works of technology, works of philosophy, works of knowledge, going back to an exceedingly ancient period of time. And I'll talk about it.
There's a follow-up question to it, for the benefit of the audience as well. How far back do we have evidence in terms of time period? I do know I've come across Nilesh Hope's research on Ramayana being 13,000 BC. How far back do we have that evidence?
So everything has got to be carefully validated. Every claim that is made must be admitted and must be studied appropriately under the confines under which you can study them. So there are some, Nilesh has presented some ideas, and Vedvi Radyaji has presented some ideas, and before them Dr. P.V. Vartak presented some ideas. Balagangadhar Tilak, he came across certain astronomical observations that were so ancient that he said, no, it's not possible. Because he was under the influence of the British who told him about Aryan invasion theory. So he revised all those things and made it into a much younger chronology in his book Orion. So you find you find a lot of different data points here and there for antiquity. Nilesh has now suggesting, based on Sutlej River, how it changed the river channels and so on and so forth. He proposes some pretty ancient dates based upon known hydrology of these river systems, known when they parted from one into Yamuna and to other things. Based upon that, he's proposing some, because he's finding evidence of their mention in some of the Rig Vedic verses. Now, an expert can come and deconstruct that and say, does it really mean that? Or does a different key will give a different interpretation? You remember the key idea that I said? It's all in there. Similarly, astronomy. When I take an astronomical observation and say, this observation corresponds to this, a different person can come and ask, if I use this key, I'm getting a different interpretation. And what can we say about it? So it requires experts to come in, deconstruct some of these claims, and come to an idea. But two other things I can reliably say, the Kali Yuga date and the date of Kritika, helical rising, I know. They're pretty ancient, and they are before Noah's flood. Yes, so tomorrow I am talking at Chinmaya Mission. I hope you all know where Chinmaya Mission is.
You have to say Chinmaya Badri if they want direction, because there are two missions.
Oh, Chinmaya Badri. Thank you. Chinmaya Badri at 11:30 to 12:45. I'll go in much more detail. I'm not talking about his political issues, more on historical issues.
Thank you, Dr. Vedam, and thank you for the great work that you do. Thank you very much. So should we take a small break for some tea? I think everyone can use some tea at this point.
Yes, please.
All right, terrific.